Hello and welcome to episode 21 of the Cybersecurity Happy Hour podcast. I am your host, Christie, and the topic of today's podcast is distributed denial of service attacks, also known as DDoS attacks. Now, when I start, I normally give an explanation of what DDoS is. So a distributed denial of service kind of happens when we have multiple systems. When I mean systems, it could be laptops, it could be servers, or even now, Internet of Things, because Internet of Things have IP addresses. These Internet of Things and these assets, these are laptops, etc., will have malware on them. So they would have sent malware to these vulnerable machines, and these machines will flood the victim, which is the targeted system. It could be, so remember, all of these assets have IP addresses. So those of you who use IoT devices, such as your kettle, will have an IP address. You have anything else that has an IP address can be used for these attacks. So all these attacks, all these hosts will be collated together to bring down a website or a resource of some sort. What is the purpose? Why would an attacker bring down a service? And when I mean a service, it could be a website. It can target a particular website. It could be various online services. It could be regional servers. And the purpose is to overwhelm that victim with a lot of traffic from all these infected hosts. Remember, I said all these IoT devices, and mentioned other systems like infected laptop desktops. So they're going to send traffic to this one resource. And if this resource hasn't really got a backup, okay, or have features that it can withstand that that traffic, then, which is really an attack, server or that resource will kill over and fail. So if it kill over and fail, let's say it's a website, then that website cannot offer the services. So imagine this was an e-commerce web service or website that is supplying, let's say, clothing, for example. Let's say a popular retail store, online store. And imagine during the pandemic, during the lockdown, there wasn't any stores open, and this store had online stuff, and the website is not available for some time. Then obviously, the services that site offers will not be available to its customers. Now, who does this? You say sometimes there might be criminal elements, cyber criminal gangs, or that will, target these websites. Sometimes they might do it on their own accord, or sometimes they could be hired by a competitor. Yes, a competitor will say, we want to bring them down so that those customers will come to us. There's various reasons, so maybe to provide or for reputational damage. If the website is down for a few minutes, that's one thing. But when you start going to hours, 12 hours, 10 hours, then the customers will lose confidence, and they'll be concerned really about their data and their personal information. And again, it starts to look bad because, they start to think, okay, this site might not be trustworthy because they cannot keep their systems secure. And how this works. This attack is done by botnets. A botnet is a robot network. I mentioned before that these laptops, computers, IO devices are vulnerable and they're already been hacked. So they will have some kind of malicious software in there, and also some of their ports will be open because, of course, the bot master, which is the person controlling the instructions, will send a command to these robot machines or to his army or botnets to start the attack. So they'll use a port to open up a port, a high-end port, to send the instructions, and these vulnerable systems, vulnerable laptops are called botnets, the network of bots. So basically, that system would have been infected already and waiting for instructions. So these cyber criminals or bot masters will use these botnets for their own reasons, said. So they can use it to send spam to, it could be, they can send spam, they can send various ransomware, and I mentioned ransomware in one of the previous podcasts, to overwhelm this system so that it cannot provide a service. Unfortunately, your system, or your laptop or your device may be part of a bot army, or be a bot without you knowing it. You may see some signs, but sometimes you're not aware that your system is actually sending out malicious spam to this victim. Of course, there are means of checking. You can check to see if a port is open and is sending out data. You can check, but just on the surface of it, you might not be immediately aware of it. So what are the symptoms of a distributed denial of service or DDoS attack? One of the things is, when we're looking at the CIA confidentiality, integrity and availability, this really affects the availability part of the CIA. So that means that system is not available. So your system was killed over, is not available to legitimate users. Now, I've mentioned a website. That's just one example. This could be internal as well. Maybe your wireless network may not be available. That's a denial of service. Maybe your work network is unavailable. People can't log in. That is an availability issue as well. But when we use the word distributed, that means the attack is coming from various sources, from various machines. Now, typically with our laptops and our systems, sometimes we do have security on them. But with some of these IoT devices, unfortunately, some of them cannot be secure because the firmware is kind of burnt in. The firmware is not updated quite frequently. So they can be used as a choice of attack by cyber criminals. Now, how can you prevent your device from being a part of a bot army or a botnet? One of the ways you can do this is make sure that you change your default credentials, your default passwords. So on your IoT devices, so you buy these IoT devices all nice and shiny out of the box and you just plug it in. But now you need to do some kind of admin on this and change default credentials, because the default credentials can be you just have to do a Google search and you can find what the default credentials are, the default passwords are. So first thing you do, change the default credentials, username and password. Okay, so once you plug it out, that's the first thing you do. And that's the first line of defense. If you're not sure, again, sometimes the manufacturers will give you guidance, and sometimes even some of these devices, they come with instructions, just that some people do not read instructions, just plug and play. Yes, plug and play is fantastic, but we always need to understand the security of it. You don't want your system to be used to attack another system, and you can't really be pleading ignorance today. Now, what else can you do to secure your device? Your router as well is how packets come into your network and how they leave your network as well. All right. So again, you need to apply that security of changing the default default passwords on your router. So if you just do a Google search, I challenge you, go do a Google search, just type in a router, you see the password is usually admin. Now, if you use that same default credentials, we know what that is. Some can actually, do a drive-by, and actually don't have to use a drive-by. If they've got a strong antenna, they can be quite far, and they log into your system and use your system as a partner. So again, change the default credentials on your router. Very, very important. Now, one thing I didn't mention about the attack, I said these systems are vulnerable. So if the system is highly secure, you have your, let's say, anti-malware, antivirus, you have firewalls, then of course your system may not become a botnet. So the third advice I would say, you make sure that your system is secure. Have a system, let's say you have an antivirus on your host, and also have some kind of maybe IDS, intrusion detection system, intrusion prevention system on your network. So you have that total protection. So the host is protected and also your network is protected. So you can see you have that defense in depth. Now, of course, when you have these as well, you have to update the signatures. So when we update the signatures, so each day your anti-malware will go to your service provider, your secure service provider, let's say Malwarebytes, for example, and downloading latest signatures to prevent your system from being vulnerable. This takes kind of work to make sure that your own systems, it's not just because you want to not be part of a botnet. These are the things that you need to be doing anyway. You want to protect your own data. So make sure that the signatures are updated. You can configure this. So as soon as the system's up and running, it downloads the newly updates. And then in that way, you are protected. Now, there have been many instances of these attacks. Yes, they have been reduced in the last few years. However, this is not a new attack. This is going back even to 2000s. Let me just cite one example. This is an attack that happened in Canada. So we're looking at, so it's not always a big business. So let's kind of look, I'll use the word a small scale. Well, actually it's not a small scale. However, I say in early 2000s, a high school student named Michael, also known as Mafia Boy, what he did, he hacked Yahoo. Okay, how do you do it? By using a distributed denial of server DDoS attack. And what he did was he managed to shut down Yahoo. He managed to shut Yahoo. And can you imagine the impact of that today? It's like, let's kind of picture this. It's like somebody shutting down Google at that time. So if Google shuts down, yes, we do have other search engines, but we do know that Google is still the preferred or the most used. So imagine there's no Google. Some might say that might be a good thing. It depends on the personal opinion. But that means that people can't do search because now companies and individuals are more reliant on Google now. So just kind of picture this at the time. So Yahoo was the big guns at that time. And this high school student named Michael, Mafia Boy, used this denial of service to shut that down. So there was a huge amount of disruption at the time. Another popular one, gone back a few years, go back in 2016. And this attack, October 2016, and the internet service provider called Dyn DNS, they were called Dyn DNS then, now they've been changed to Oracle DNS. So it used to be Dyn DNS, now the Oracle DYN. Again, they were attacked. They had this botnet attack. And the botnet was called the Mirai Botnet. And this botnet infected over 100,000 Internet of Things. Okay, so when I talk about Internet of Things, this includes cameras, IP cameras. This could be printers. Now we have wireless printers. So in its heyday, the Mirai Botnet consisted of, let's say, up to nearly 500 or between 400 to 500,000 bots. This affected some services such as, at that time, what services were affected? Amazon was affected. Spotify was affected. Tumblr, Twitter. So you can see this, if in social media sites. So coming back to what we are aware, there's a lot of people using Netflix as a service. Imagine no Netflix. And now again, some of you might say that might be a good thing. Okay, but some people might rely on it. Some people have paid for this service. Remember, people have paid for this service, and that service is not available. So let's look from that point of view. So this is why I'm kind of bringing this to light, just to enlighten you. I said some of these have reduced, but that threat is still there. And then what can you do to make sure? Because again, they're going to use your device to attack these big guns. Okay, and you don't really want to be part of that. So you have to secure your system. The responsibility begins with you. They have to secure their systems as well. But they're using your device as a tool. So everyone's responsible. And lastly, let's just give one more example. This happened last year. So to talk about last year, 2020, Well, the Akamai reported that they were able to stop a distributed denial service on a large European bank. And from what they could determine from the records is that there were over 800 million packets sent to that bank. And that was one of the largest packets ever sent. 809 million packets per second. And of course, we know what I've explained why. Why are they doing that? To want to bring down that European bank service. And that was specially crafted to overwhelm the network. Not just the network, also any of the applications as well, including their data centers. Whew. But they were able to mitigate against that threat. Now, just to reinforce what you can do henceforth, okay, your systems, your network must be monitored, ongoing monitoring, to protect. If you're a company, your company and you have servers, make sure that you monitor your servers, monitor the traffic that's coming in and out of your network. Okay, there are various tools, monitoring tools. I'm not going to mention any monitoring tools, but there are various monitoring tools that can alert your administrator for unusual traffic. So if there's been a sudden increase in traffic, then they can alert your analyst or your administrator. You can also, another suggestion, you can also probably switch to part of it to the cloud. So, because of course, the cloud would have more expertise, more service, more servers, and they are more resilient. Okay, they have expertise, more resiliency, and they do also have a lot more security as well. So that can kind of reduce the impact as a way of also transferring some of the risk to the cloud. So, and the reason why is that if it kind of takes that transfer whereby the cloud system will be patched. So all the security patching updates will be done by the cloud service provider. Okay, especially if you haven't got that in-house staff, that expertise. You can bind the expertise by transferring the risk to the cloud where they have more expertise. And of course, finally, have a robust incident response plan. Let's say, yes, if you do discover, then you need to obviously investigate, follow your incident response plan when it comes to, especially in sort of intrusion attacks, then follow your response plan as part of your remediation. Thank you once again for listening to the podcast. I would love to hear from you. Please, you can contact me on our Instagram, CyberSecHappHour, or you can send an email to our organization, admin@intexit. All the contact are on our show notes. Now, if you have a specific topic you want me to discuss, then please drop me a line. Thank you. Until next time.